Yes. What better way to start your 3-day weekend than, of course, listening to Beyond Reason here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com. Yep, most of you are about to start a 3-day weekend. I'm about to start a 3-day weekend. But you can't start the weekend without listening to the voice of reason, the voice of the millennial generation, the voice of the Yaffee generation, sifting through all the stuff out there that is, well, beyond reason. And, of course, I'm joined by, as always, Tom Benson producing for me. How's it going, Tom?
Well, I'm being reasonable tonight. How about that?
You're being reasonable. Good. That's good. I'm glad. I don't want an unreasonable producer.
It's a holiday weekend. You know, everybody's in a good mood, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of the long weekend, one thing you might want to do this weekend is, if you're looking for some fun, go out to Doc's Streetside Grill.
Of course.
This show and this hour is brought to you by Doc's Streetside Grill on off West Orange Avenue, right across from ORM. See your prescription for good times. So it seems that the big news today, there isn't really a whole lot of big news, but it seems like the big news today is Hillary Clinton, the State Department, has released some of those emails. Those emails that were on her personal email, and it's a whole big scandal. And, of course, she dumped it right before the 3-day weekend, so it wouldn't get as much attention. But that seems to be what it is, that she's released some emails, and now the search begins to sift through all the emails and see if there's anything bad. And I just wonder if the average American cares.
At this point, I would think not. But if there's a smoking gun in there somewhere, they might become more interested.
Right. I don't think they're going to find a smoking gun, because, at least not yet, because Hillary Clinton probably deleted everything and wiped clean everything that could have been a smoking gun. It seems like with this whole email thing, people on my side want there to be something there. And what she did, yes, was illegal. What she did, she shouldn't have done. But when we're talking about the average person out there and you tell them, well, Hillary Clinton used personal emails, so you shouldn't vote for her because she did that, they're not going to care. I just don't think they're going to care.
Well, back in March, she said that there was nothing sensitive in the emails that that she used on her private server.
Well, that's a lie.
Well, yeah, of course, because the ones that were released today got big black lines through them. They've been redacted, so there is sensitivity there.
So let me get this straight. We finally get her to release the emails, and we can't even see.
There's some blacked out areas.
All of the emails that she has released.
That's
okay,
right.
All right, yeah, that makes sense. How about though we just don't vote for her because of her terrible policies? How about that? Her terrible ideas for the country. There's an idea. I don't know, how about we just don't vote for her for that reason?
Oh, also this week, did you hear that somebody came up with a brilliant idea? I saw this on the internet, and you can't believe everything in the internet, but somebody somewhere said that Hillary was being urged to make Obama her running mate.
Now, is that Barack or Michelle?
I don't know. Well, that would be Barack.
Okay.
Not Michelle. But if that were to happen, I would get if I were Hillary, I'd get a food taster.
Well, that's actually really interesting, though. Is that unconstitutional for him to be a vice presidential candidate?
I don't think so. I don't think it's addressed because there have been presidents in the past who went on to become Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, and others became, I think there's some who actually went back to Congress. Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting. I didn't think about that. So, yeah, how about we just don't vote for Hillary Clinton because of her bad ideas for the country? Although, this time around, I was thinking about this on the way here. I haven't heard her give any ideas for the country yet in this campaign. I can't even think of any ideas that she has right now.
Here's a real hypothetical. If you really want to get silly sometime with this, who would you vote for, Hillary or Barack again?
Oh. Why, Tom Benson?
Well,
why are you making me do that?
Then you would, chances are most people would go with the devil you know as opposed to the devil you don't know.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. I don't know. And then, of course, we have the actual socialist Bernie Sanders running on the Democrat side, too. At least he's honest about who he is. There's something. That's where the Democrat Party is going. Well, speaking of hypotheticals, the big news for the past couple weeks, this seems to be what certain places in the media are creating this issue. And they're asking candidates, it's complete hypothetical, and really it doesn't matter, but they're asking candidates like Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton, knowing what you know now, would you have invaded Iraq? Knowing what you know now, would you have invaded Iraq? And of course, the person they really wanted to get with this is Jeb Bush because he's George Bush's brother. Now, before I'm going to play some audio from the candidates. Before I do, I want to know your take. Do you think, well, one, do you think we should have invaded Iraq anyways? But answer the hypothetical. Knowing what you know now, should we have invaded Iraq? I'm going to get into a little bit of what I think, but I'm also going to get into the way I think history is going to judge the Iraq War. I think history is going to be a lot kinder to the war in Iraq than people think. But there's a lot of stuff about it that's illogical, that's not really talked about, so I want to get into that. But first, we played this before, but Jeb Bush, he had a sort of evolution of how he answered this question. First he said yes, then he said I misunderstood, then he said no. Well, let's just listen to a little bit of Jeb Bush here.
I would have, and so would have Hillary Clinton, just to remind everybody, and so would have almost everybody that was confronted with the intelligence they got.
I don't know what that decision would have been. That's a hypothetical.
Given the power of looking back and having that, of course, anybody would have made different decisions.
Jeez, even there, he really didn't answer the question. Different decisions. What different decisions? All right. And then we have Hillary Clinton. She was asked, the first time she's talked to the media in weeks, she was asked about this, and this was her answer.
I've made it very clear that I made a mistake, plain and simple.
All right, so there you go. She made a mistake. Okay, she's made a lot of mistakes, but that apparently is just one of them. All right, 407-674-1025, 855-545-1025, if you want to give me your take on should we have gone into Iraq. Here's the thing that always bothers me about this debate when it comes to the war in Iraq. We put it as singular, the war in Iraq, when actually it's two different wars that we've been fighting since this started under George W. Bush in 2003. If you want to talk about the original war in Iraq, which was the war against Saddam and his army, that was a huge success. Because the goal of that war was to defeat Saddam and his army and get him out of power in regime change, basically. And that happened very quickly. It was a huge success. So when you talk about that war, knowing what we know now or whatever, that part of the war was a success. What was not a success was the second war in Iraq. And that started with Al-Qaeda in Iraq and the insurgency. The second war in Iraq was not against Saddam, was not the original enemy, but was against Al-Qaeda in Iraq and the insurgency. That's what really started all the problems in Iraq, was the insurgency and Al-Qaeda. And it used to amaze me that when we were having trouble there, the Democrats immediately said, we need to get out of there. And I thought to myself, most of them are for staying in Afghanistan. Most of them are still for fighting Al-Qaeda, yet they want to lose to Al-Qaeda in Iraq. So when you talk about the hypothetical, should we have gone in there, the whole thing's really illogical because it's two different wars. So we have to look at each part of the war differently. Now, being that as it may. Oh, and the other part that's illogical when you think about it is they say, well, we didn't find any weapons of mass destruction. Well, it turns out we actually did find some, and we found some facilities. And Bush just didn't broadcast it because he didn't want the terrorists and the extremist groups to get a hold of it. So that's another part that's not talked about as much. The whole thing with me, I probably, if I were president, I'll answer the hypothetical. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to answer the hypothetical. Knowing what we know now, I probably would not have gone into Iraq. I was thinking this if I were president, I would try. I'm not anti-war, but I would try to avoid war as best as I could, because you're sending your citizens to fight and die. And when we first went in there, it wasn't to fight Al-Qaeda, our true enemy in this world, and now ISIS, which came out of Al-Qaeda. We were fighting Al-Qaeda, but that's not how it started. Did we really think Saddam Hussein was that big of a threat? Some do, I wonder. But how will history judge the war in Iraq? The thing that came out of Iraq, and this was not the intention, what really came out of the Iraq war that no one talks about is, I think, it created a battleground in that part of the world so we could fight Al-Qaeda and terrorist groups. So we were fighting them over there and not over here. I know some people have said that, but I really believe that. I really believe that we were able to fight them more effectively because we were over there. And because we were over there and we were fighting them over there, it decreased the chances of us being attacked over here. And that, I think that's a big reason why we were not attacked over here again in the Bush years, was because we were over there in Iraq. We created a battleground, and this wasn't the intent, but we created a battleground over there so we didn't have to fight them over here. And I think when history looks back on it, they're going to realize that. They're going to see that. The problem is, we frankly left too soon. No matter if we should have gone in or not, we shouldn't have left when we did. And even if the Iraqis started not to like us for being over there, I guarantee you they like us more than they like ISIS, who is now taking over Iraq. And ISIS is the real enemy of the United States, and we're not willing to fight them. And I think we have a responsibility to fight them. Now, they say, well, ISIS would have never existed if we never went in there in the first place. I'm not so sure of that. Because really, ISIS got its foothold in Syria, not Iraq. ISIS really started to grow in Syria. We never went into Syria. We never fought in Syria. A lot of these places where ISIS started was places we didn't go to war to begin with. 407-674-1025. I want to get your take, though. My take is, if I were president, I probably would not have invaded. I probably would have focused more on Afghanistan. And, Bush really didn't like that. He really said, oh, well, fighting in Iraq did not divert us away from fighting in Afghanistan. From what I've read, it did. It really stretched the military thin. And we didn't get to fight in Afghanistan as effectively as we could because we were in Iraq. I really believe that. But I think history will judge it differently because it created a battleground over there. So I think history will be somewhat more positive about the war than we are now. 407-674-1025. You are listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 WFLA, BeyondReasonRadio.com.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. Now, back to Beyond Reason Radio.
Yes, welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio, the place where you hear the voice of reason that sifts through everything in the news that is, well, beyond reason. It's also the place where you can get your common sense transplant. Yeah, you like that. If you want common sense, you want a common sense transplant, you can get that here. I actually stole that from Deborah Roberts in the morning show, but I liked it, so I'm going to start saying it. All right, I've been talking about the Iraq war, and I was saying that if I were president, knowing what I knew now, I probably would not go into Iraq, just because I think a lot about history, and I think a lot about, say, what happened when George Washington was president, for instance, and you had France and Britain fighting each other, and there was calls, oh, we need to get involved in that war at the time. And he said no. He tried his best to avoid war. This was a general who fought a war. And I think a president should really try his best to avoid war unless it's really for the survival of the country. And I'm not sure anyone really believed that. Well, maybe Bush did believe. He believed that he had weapons of mass destruction, that he was going to sell it to terrorists, that he was going to use it. But unless it's really, really necessary, we should always look to peace first. That being said, I think history will be kinder, like I said, because the war created a battleground over there, so we could fight them over there and not over here. 407-674-1025. First, I'm going to talk to Abel in Orlando. Welcome to Beyond Reason Radio, Abel. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
What is your take on this?
I'm sorry?
What is your take on this topic, on Iraq? Would you have gone into Iraq?
I agree with you that presidents have to be very careful about starting a war and everything. But I sort of don't blame Bush, because the faulty intelligence came from Israel, and that's a known fact. And,
right. There was faulty intelligence. That was right. There's also some evidence that maybe they wanted that intelligence to be true because they really thought it was the best thing to fight the war on terror was to go into the Middle East and change the Middle East. But
the problem was that Bush Senior actually started this whole thing. If you guys remember, in 1992,
right,
when Saddam invaded Kuwait,
right,
he did a great job with putting a coalition together and everything, but that 100-hour war was a problem because he sort of yielded to the Saudis and other Arabs. They didn't want Saddam to be overthrown, so
right.
he stopped that war prematurely. In fact, he first told all the Shia in the south of Iraq to revolt against Saddam, and then when the Shias actually stood up and started fighting, he declared peace with Saddam, and then Saddam went after the Shias.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I think, and thank you for your call, Abel, I think in the future, if we don't let ISIS take over, I think Iraq will be a better place in the future for Iraqis than it was under Saddam. That's if we help them fight ISIS or do something about ISIS. We definitely don't want ISIS making a caliphate in the Middle East. I just can't see that that's a good thing for the future of our country. Just a thought. I mean, people say, oh, we should just leave them alone over there. I don't think they're going to leave us alone, even if we leave them alone. That's the problem. Mark, in Orlando, what's your comment on this?
Yeah, Yaffee. Kind of mostly disagree with you, I think. I don't think history is going to treat it wisely. In my opinion, I mean, all what we've done has created more issues and terrorists. And, I mean, if you look at what even bin Laden said, his reasoning for attacking us back on September 11th was, is what we have done in the Middle East. And,
that was...
Oh, yeah, no, that's what he said. And, having bases, and some of it obviously is I don't agree with. Obviously, I don't agree with any kind of killing. But, whenever we do this, we've only created terrorists. And since my lifetime, since I've been paying attention to politics in the world, basically around me, when I was, 20-ish, when 9/11 happened, we've been in a perpetual war, and I don't see an end cycle to it. And, I mean, whenever we cut off one head of a snake, two more pop up. And, I don't, none of it is good, obviously. I don't think anybody likes war, but I think we need to stop beating the war drum here. And,
so what do you think the world would be like right now if we did not go into Iraq?
Probably not as bad. There's always been terrorism and different activities. In other ways, obviously, now with technology and weaponry more sophisticated, it's going to be harder and harder to do. But, I mean, we can just look at recent events in Libya. We helped take out Gaddafi, and it's a far worse place than what it was with Gaddafi. So, I mean,
That's
if
true.
we had not taken out Saddam, he has, he kept all those factions that they hate each other. I mean,
Do you think that would have lasted,
We're
though?
not. Well, I mean, you got to think who we're fighting. We're fighting an ideologue. We're not fighting an enemy with a country's colors. We're fighting people that, are borderless, basically countryless. And so I mean, this is kind of going back to, when we took out the British Empire, basically, when we kicked them out of America. We hid behind trees and shot them, and they were in their redcoats, and that's how we are right now. We can't.
Well, that's true, and that's true,
we
Mark.
have
And
to
I appreciate your call, Mark. It's very true. We're not willing to fight. That's a big problem. You want to talk about why we have this perpetual state of war, because we're not willing really to fight the way we should and defeat the enemy. I mean, that's very true. I don't buy this whole argument that the reason we were attacked on 9/11, and I've heard this many, many times, that the reason we were attacked on 9/11, this is something Ron Paul used to say, is because we have bases over there and because we were over there and they didn't like that we were over there, so they attacked us. They attacked us because they're religious ideologues that want to create a caliphate throughout the whole Middle East and most of the world. And our influence in the world, no matter if we were over there or not, we still have an influence in the world. And we talk about bases or whatever. We helped them defeat the Russians in the 80s. But this has been going on for a long time. Really, who they hate, who the terrorists hate a lot, was their own dictators and their own leaders over there. But I just think they attacked us because they literally hate our influence, hate what we stand for. You had leaders in the Middle East that were trying to modernize it, that were trying to bring it in to the 20th century, into the 21st century. And and just our influence, just our trade with these other countries, we're helping those countries to do that. And then you had a deep-seated Muslim hatred for that change. And they thought the best way to stop that change was not only to attack the leaders over there, but to attack America and our influence and what we stand for. I just don't buy that if we didn't have bases around the world, that the terrorist would be like, oh, we'll just leave America alone. They're fine. They're fine. So not only would we have not had to have had bases in the world, but we would have had not even to trade with these other countries. Not even to buy goods and sell goods with any of these other countries. We would have had to totally be isolated, which is almost never happened in the history of mankind. Trade between countries has been going on for all of the history of the world. But I think that influence and that struggle started way before we had bases in the Middle East. It's a struggle between the radical Islamic way of thinking and the modern Western way of thinking, and two different visions of what the world should be. And you had the people in the Middle East trying to bring those countries to the Western way, and you had the terrorists, the radical Islamic fundamentalists, who did not want that to happen. And they saw the real enemy of why that was happening was America and its influence. 407-674-1025. When I get back, I have the most amazing, beyond reason article I've ever read. Do you think the media was racist? Well, not racist, but has a racist double standard when it comes to reporting gangs? I have an article the person's very upset because we didn't focus on the race of the biker gangs in Waco, Texas. That shows the doubled standard. You just have to read it to believe it. 407-674-1025. You're listening Beyond Reason Radio. News Radio 1025 WFLA, BeyondReasonRadio.com.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason radio podcast. Just search Bud Henninger or stream the show live by searching News Radio 102.5 WFLA.
Welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. I just want to clarify my remarks a little bit. Basically, I think what caused terrorism and what caused the terrorists to really hate us is their radical religious beliefs against the way our civilization is and our influence of our civilization in the world. I believe literally it was a clash of civilizations that was inevitable, that they hated the way the world was going and they want to bring it back to what they believe it should be under what the Quran says, the Hadith says, and radical Islam says. So I believe that's where that's going. So, just switching topics here. Did you think, and I couldn't believe when I even heard this, because this thought did not even enter my mind until I saw this article. The Waco coverage, this was according to Sally Cohn, a CNN political commentator. Waco coverage shows double standard on race. I was like, what? Why? Oh, well, she continues. After the shootout, someone posted on Twitter, I'll wait and wait and wait and wait to hear someone on the news call what happened in Waco white on white violence. Her point is, and someone else said, do we even know the race of the bikers yet? If they were black gangs, we'd certainly know by now. That's the point, Waco. So, according to them, if they're black gangs, we would have all been like, oh, they're black, this is black on black violence or whatever. But because there were white gangs, we didn't even mention their race. They're biker gangs, and we're like, oh, we're not gonna say what their race is because they're white, and we don't want to point out that they're white. Does anyone in this country actually believe when they hear? Was there anyone in this country that heard the news and did not know that these gangs were white? That these biker gangs were most likely mostly white? If the media was trying to hide that from us, I don't think they would have done a very good job, because I think the American people would have known that, okay, these are white biker gangs in Texas. So, but no, this shows the racist double standard. So, Tom Benson, when you heard, I mean, did this thought even cross your mind? You're like shaking your head, rolling. No. Ever since I brought up this story, you've been shaking your head and rolling your eyes at this.
Not at all. You know, I mean, when you think of biker gangs, you think of, I don't even think of race. I mean, they're just bikers, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But the one thing they don't point out is the fact that no whites in Waco started rioting after the bikers shot each other.
Oh, that's an interesting point. I didn't even think about that.
Well, the other thing I heard, too, this week was that the bikers are planning revenge on the police in Waco. That's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we're going to side with the police. I guess some people will be happy that they're doing that. I don't know. It's unbelievable. But they're saying that with the Freddie Gray, immediately they said he was black. Why do you think they did that? Why do you think they immediately pointed out that Freddie Gray was black?
I don't recall that happening either. I mean, I didn't pay attention to it. Maybe I just don't. Maybe I'm colorblind. I don't even think about that.
I think most people don't. That's the point. Yeah. It's dumb. But the reason why certain parts of the media did that was not because they're racist against blacks, but because they wanted to show police brutality, quotation marks there, against blacks. If anything, most of the people in the media were probably trying to side with blacks, trying to show that, oh, there's this hatred of blacks among police, and that's why Freddie Gray was killed. That was most of what the coverage I saw. I don't know what she's talking about. I literally have no idea. When I saw the story in Texas, like millions of other Americans, I thought, this is not good. These are really bad people. They need to be taken care of and arrested. And this whole idea that oh, well, we're trying to make it seem better because they're white.
One thing I always try to keep in mind with the media is confrontation is a seller.
Yeah, exactly.
Confrontation gets ratings. So there's any way they can gin things up to get better ratings, you know they're going to do it.
And that's what they did.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
There was nowhere that I saw that they treated the biker gangs better because they were white. I didn't see anywhere that they were like, well, it's not that bad. Everywhere I saw, it was like, these guys are thugs. Like,
right. They were called thugs by Fox News on TV.
Yeah, that these guys were thugs, that these guys were bad people, that these guys need to be dealt with, that it was a tragedy and stupid what happened over there. Everything I saw in the media reports about this was not positive. So this whole idea, I mean, what media are they reading? Where would you read that it's like biker gangs, they might have been white, like we don't know. And there was a shootout, but it wasn't so bad. So we're all back to normal and everything's good. No, everything I heard is it's bad. It's going to get a lot worse. And race had nothing to do with it because it's not about that. So I don't know. And I have not seen any of the bias that she's talking about. 407-674-1025. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe there is this big racist double standard that I haven't seen. Most of the time, the double standard seems to be the other direction. That, well, for instance, the whole Michael Brown thing. Do you know that the mayor in the city over there in Ferguson is creating a memorial plaque at the site of where Michael Brown was killed? A nice memorial that shows, it's a good tribute to this man. You mean the criminal? The criminal that robbed a store, that attacked a police officer, that all the evidence shows that the police officer was trying to defend himself. I know people still don't believe that, but I mean, from all the research I've seen, especially the autopsy was in line with the officer's story. So there you go. That's a double standard in the other way.
Who's paying for the memorial? Do we know that?
No, can you look that up for me? I think it's the city, actually.
Oh, okay.
From what I read, I think it's actually the city. Because what happened is they actually made like a makeshift, like there was people in the city that made some kind of like a makeshift memorial there, but then the city took over and actually made what was a really nice memorial. So I just saw that story and I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I ever said. And every now and then we like to show the ridiculousness of some things out there that are completely beyond reason. And apparently the media is racist against blacks because of the way they covered the Waco, Texas thing, not pointing out their race. So I guess they should have said white. That's what they should have done. They should have said white biker gangs in Waco, Texas. White bikers did white-on-white violence, and 9 people were killed, and many were injured and arrested. And it was white bikers that are going to cause more problems against police. There we go. Do you feel better now? Do you feel better now, Miss CNN correspondent, Miss Sally Cohn? Do you feel better now? I'm just going to say that. Anytime there's a story out there about a white person, I'm going to yell white. This person was white! And maybe Sally Cohn will feel better. I don't know. I'm just saying. The other thing that is beyond reason out there that was in the news, and actually, Tom Benson, I'm going to have you play some audio in a minute, but it seems like maybe did you find out who did it?
Yeah, I found a story from last year. Hold on. Just found a story from last year that the memorial and funeral services for Brown were paid by a fraternity. I'm not sure what university, but it was a fraternity. And that the memorial has now been changed from a memorial to just a plaque.
Oh, okay. But who made the plaque? Do we know? No. I think it was actually the city. All right. But I want to shift gears a little bit in the next segment. Another thing that was way beyond reason. Obama does a speech at a Coast Guard commencement ceremony. These are people in the Coast Guard. They're joining the military. They're probably very patriotic people. And he said the biggest national security threat, one of the biggest ones, get this, climate change. That's a big national security threat. Now, I was just thinking about the last caller. Why did they attack us on 9/11? Why did Osama bin Laden and the terrorists attack us on 9/11? I think we're both wrong, actually. I think it wasn't because of our influence in the world and they hate what our country stands for and our civilization stands for and emulates. Nor was it because we have bases over there and they just hate us being over there. I think the main reason they attacked us is because of global warming. Duh. What was I thinking? That's why the terrorists attacked us. Global warming. That's kind of the point Obama's making, that all the problems in the Middle East now are because of global warming. I kid you not. ISIS is caused by global warming. You didn't know that? Yep, that's why we were attacked on 9/11, because of global warming. Now it all makes sense. All the other theories I put out later, and then Mark, our caller, pointed out later, no. It's because of global warming. 407-674-1025. You are listening to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 WFLA and BeyondReasonRadio.com.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. And podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime.
Welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio, News Radio 1025 and BeyondReasonRadio.com. So I found out, Tom, you said you found out who was funding the plaque, the memorial plaque in Ferguson. Tell us who that was.
Oh, sure. Now you're going to throw it at me.
Yeah.
Hold on. I changed my screens here. It's the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, which is the fraternity of Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, I don't know if that's a fraternity he founded or that was a fraternity he was a member of.
Okay.
That supposedly he was paying for this. But this was dated back in August of last year, so things could have changed by now.
Yeah. I found out that it was actually the announcement of the plaque was the mayor actually did the announcement announcing that, hey, they're putting a plaque to replace a makeshift memorial that was there before. So it seemed like the mayor was actually kind of supportive of it, which was very interesting. All right. I was talking about before how everything wrong in the world is climate change, and Obama said, well, you just have to listen to what he said to earlier this week to some Coast Guard members trying to graduate from their school.
I'm here today to say that climate change constitutes a serious threat to global security, an immediate risk to our national security. And make no mistake, it will impact how our military defends our country. Severe drought helped to create the instability in Nigeria that was exploited by the terrorist group Boko Haram. It's now believed that drought and crop failures and high food prices helped fuel the early unrest in Syria. So increasingly, our military and our combatant commanders, our services, including the Coast Guard, will need to factor climate change into plans and operations because you need to be ready.
All right, so there you go. Global warming is causing all the problems in the Middle East. Does that mean that global warming has been happening for like 1,000 years? Because that's how long, even longer than that, there's been a lot of problems in the Middle East, been a lot of wars and fight. Maybe the Crusades was all because of global warming. Or maybe when the Muslims took over a lot of the Middle East in the beginning, that was all because of global warming. All this time, I thought the terrorists hated us for our way of life, and it was a religious ideology fueling them. And no, it's actually famine and droughts, and because we'd never had those before in the history of mankind ever. No, it's just because of global warming. Well, speaking of that though, I found an interesting article. This was a study done by the Lancet. And what they found is very interesting. This is something that's not talked about. Forget the whole debate on is it really man-made? Is it really even happening? Maybe global warming isn't true. Maybe we're really facing global cooling, blah, blah, blah. Forget that debate. Let's just assume that Obama's right, that the planet, and Al Gore's right, that the planet is getting warmer and it's going to get warmer, and global warming, man-made climate change is actually happening. Is it a bad thing if it's happening? Why is it automatically assumed that the warming planet would actually be bad for human beings? Think about it. We just assume that warmer climates would be bad. But maybe human beings are made for warmer climates. Maybe we're helping our civilization. Well, according to this study I found in the Lancet, cold weather kills 20 times as many people as hot weather. This is a study analyzing over 74 million deaths in 384 locations across 13 countries. The findings also reveal the deaths due to moderately hot or cold weather substantially exceed those resulting from extreme heat waves or cold spells. Interesting. We automatically assume that if global warming is real, that if the planet's really warming, that it's going to be a bad thing. But there's actually plants oftentimes will survive more and thrive in certain warmer climates. Human beings were actually meant for more tropical climates in the first place. We're not meant for really cold climates. So I just thought that was interesting. We talk about the threat of global warming. Maybe we should be cheering for it. I always joke that I want global warming to here. I was promised global warming, and it's not here every time it's cold. I'm like, what the heck? I was promised global warming. Why is it cold? Because I'm not a fan of the cold. But maybe there was actually some truth to what I was saying. That maybe we should, the article I pointed out said, hey, spew out more of that CO2. Go ahead and exhale a little more. It might actually help the planet. It might actually help human civilization if it's true. Because cool weather actually kills more than warm weather. I just found that interesting because we all have this like perception. I've talked a lot about that perception. We all have this perception that's been drilled into us that if global warming exists, that it's automatically bad for us. But maybe we can make the case that it's good for us. Of course, nobody will make that case because it isn't really about climate. It really isn't about weather. It's about politics. It's about changing the economy of the country, changing the economy of the world, and changing the political landscape in favor of more socialist Democrat policies. That's what it's really about. We all know that. And
it's about the polar bear pictures of them on ice floating somewhere in the Antarctica.
I know, the polar bears, even though there's more of them than there were 100 years ago.
Sucking the kitties on that one, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've already done that on the show. We can get in the whole debate on if it's real. There are definitely more polar bears. Talk about people wanting to save, trees in the country. There's actually more trees now than there were 100 years ago in the country and all that stuff. All right, before we go, it's Memorial Day is coming up Monday. And I really hope that we can all take a moment and remember our fallen heroes. Because whether we should have won in Iraq or not, I believe our soldiers are heroes. That the vast majority of them went over to fight for their country. And that definitely compared to the history of the world, that our military is good and tries to do the right thing. Much more than other militaries have done in the past. And I found this article, kind of gave me hope for maybe our pop culture. It's from the Washington Free Beacon. Miss America, Kira Kazantesev. Dang it. I knew I was going to mess that up. Kazantesev, front and center. Miss America said National Memorial Day Parade, one of the biggest honors of the year. This is Miss America. She does a lot of things. She says, I get to do some pretty awesome stuff, but this is one of the biggest honors of my year. As Miss America, it's my responsibility to give back to the troops and thank them for their service in person. And what better opportunity than the Veterans Parade on Memorial Day. She'll be on a float that and also performing God Bless America. She says, we will keep it classic on Memorial Day. It really puts life in perspective for you, she said. I've been given the opportunity to be reminded that our freedoms are provided by these people, and that if it weren't for our servicemen and women, then we wouldn't have the things that we have today. Couldn't have said it better myself. So try to remember our heroes this Memorial Day. But before that, have a good weekend. You've been listening to Beyond Reason Radio. Of course, I will be back next Friday and hope you're here. And, well, catch you then.
Oh, well.